Under the golden African sun, the university courtyard buzzed with life, students laughing, music echoing, and colorful modern outfits shining under the light. Among them walked Amahal, a humble girl with a calm smile and a faded blue dress that carried the memory of her late mother. The laughter around her wasn't kind. "Look at that dress," one student whispered. "Did she borrow it from a museum?" The giggles grew, echoing across the courtyard. Amal's fingers brushed against the fabric, remembering her mother's words. "Dignity isn't in what you wear, it's in how you walk." So she lifted her head, straightened her back, and walked on, not in pride, but in quiet strength. In the cafeteria, Nandi, the queen of the campus, sat surrounded by her stylish friends. Her voice was loud, her confidence sharp. When Amahal walked by, Nandi smirked and said, "Oh look, the vintage model's here." The table erupted in laughter again. Amahal kept walking, found a quiet corner, and opened her book. But behind her calm eyes burned a hidden fire, not anger, but determination. The scene was ordinary, yet it carried the weight of every dreamer who had ever been mocked for not fitting in. That evening, the city softened under the setting sun. Amahal walked home through narrow streets lined with jacaranda trees. Children's laughter echoed, and the smell of evening meals filled the air. She stopped by her aunt's small tailor shop, helping her clothes for the day. The little sewing machine clicked softly inside, surrounded by colorful fabrics. Her aunt, Mama Zola, looked up and said gently, "You let them laugh again, didn't you?" Amahal stayed silent. "Child," Mama Zola continued, threading her needle carefully, "those who laugh at your scars will one day pay to see your strength." Amahal smiled faintly and sat down to help her sew. Each stitch she made carried quiet meaning, a silent promise to herself. Inside the shop hung a half-finished gown, her dream project. It was bold, inspired by the elegance of African queens, with deep blue and gold fabric folded neatly beside it. As she sewed, Amahal whispered, "One day they'll see." Outside, the streetlights flickered, and the sound of drums from a nearby radio filled the night air, a reminder that even in small corners of the city, dreams were being stitched together with hope. A week later, a royal announcement shook the entire campus. Posters appeared everywhere. "The Queen's Foundation presents the Royal Design Competition. Winner will be mentored by the Queen herself." The halls buzzed with excitement. Nandi's voice echoed louder than ever. She was determined to win, already bragging about the professional designer she'd hired. When Amahal saw the poster, she folded it quietly and placed it in her bag. That night, in her small room lit by a single candle, she began to sketch. Her hands moved with purpose. Each line on the paper told a story, of pain, of hope, of a girl who believed that even torn fabric could become something beautiful. Days turned into nights. She worked endlessly after classes, sewing by hand when the power went out, using scraps from her aunt's shop. Her fingers blistered, but she didn't stop. The faded blue dress she once wore became her muse. It reminded her where she came from, and why she couldn't give up. Every time exhaustion hit, she remembered her mother's voice. "The world may mock your cloth, but never your craft." Meanwhile, on campus, Nandi's arrogance grew. She flaunted her gown design, shimmering silk imported from Paris. One afternoon, she crossed paths with Amahal and smirked. "You? Competing against me?" "Sweetheart, this is fashion, not charity." Amahal simply smiled and replied, "Maybe not. But even queens wear grace before gold." The words silenced the group for a moment. Behind Amal's calm voice was quiet confidence that Nandi couldn't understand. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. The grand hall sparkled with chandeliers. Journalists, influencers, and designers filled the seats. Cameras flashed. The Queen's Foundation banner gleamed in gold. Contestants lined up backstage, each adjusting their gowns nervously. Amahal stood among them, her creation hidden under a plain cloth. Her heart raced, but her eyes were steady. One by one, the contestants presented their designs. Nandi's turn came, and her gown dazzled. The audience gasped in admiration as she walked across the stage, her silk gown shimmering under the lights. She bowed proudly, certain of her victory. Then came Amal's turn. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The hall fell silent. Slowly, she revealed her gown, a breathtaking piece of art. The colors of the ocean and earth blended together, golden patterns running through deep blue fabric. It was modern, elegant, and unmistakably African. The audience stared in awe. The queen herself leaned forward, her eyes filled with interest. "Who designed this?" she asked softly. "Her name is Amahal, your majesty," replied one of the judges. The queen stood up, and the hall went completely silent. "Come here, child," she said. Amahal stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly. The queen touched the fabric and smiled. "This is not fashion," she said warmly. "This is heritage. This is the soul of our people stitched into elegance." A tear slid down Amal's cheek as applause erupted through the hall. Nandi's smile vanished, replaced by disbelief. The same people who once mocked Amahal were now on their feet, cheering her name. The queen turned to the crowd and said, "True royalty is not in what we wear, but in what we create when no one believes in us." Cameras flashed. The image of the queen holding Amal's hand spread everywhere that night, across social media, television, and magazines. The headline read, "The girl who sewed her way to the throne." As Amahal stepped outside into the cool night air, she looked up at the sky. The stars shimmered above her, the same ones her mother used to point at when life felt unfair. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she whispered, "Mama, they laughed at my dress, but heaven chose my destiny." The jacaranda tree swayed gently in the wind, petals falling like blessings. Her story had only begun, but the world had finally seen her worth. The next morning, the sun rose softly over the capital city. Amahal stood on the balcony of the royal residence, still struggling to believe where she was. The queen had personally invited her to stay for a mentorship, something that had never happened before. The scent of roses filled the air, and the golden skyline stretched wide like a promise. Amahal clutched the small cross pendant her mother had given her and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." Your little girl made it, yet beneath her gratitude, she felt something heavier, the weight of attention, envy, and expectations. By midday, the palace was alive with movement. Reporters waited outside the gates, shouting her name. Inside, royal advisors discussed how to feature her story in the foundation's next campaign. But not everyone was happy. Among the queen's fashion circle was Lady Thandi, a senior designer who had mentored Nandi in the past. Her pride burned when she saw Amahal receiving the kind of admiration she herself had sought for years. "A girl from the streets replacing us?" she whispered to her assistant. The queen is blinded by sentiment. The seeds of jealousy had begun to sprout again, this time in the halls of royalty. Meanwhile, Amahal spent her days learning. The queen treated her like a daughter, teaching her not just about fashion, but about grace, leadership, and humility. "You have something they cannot learn in schools," the queen told her one afternoon. "Heart. And heart will always be the rarest fabric of all." Amahal smiled, feeling seen in a way she never had before. Still, late at night, she'd sew quietly in her guest room, creating designs inspired by ordinary women, the market sellers, the teachers, the mothers, each one telling a story of strength. She wanted fashion to be more than glamour. She wanted it to be truth. But as Amal's fame rose, so did the storm brewing outside. Nandi, humiliated by her loss, refused to accept defeat. She began spreading rumors online, accusing Amahal of stealing designs, lying about her background, even calling her the Queen's charity project. The posts gained traction fast. People love to lift heroes, but love to doubt them even more. Within days, hashtags questioning Amal's talent trended across social media. Paparazzi swarmed her small tailor shop. Reporters asked cruel questions. "Did you really make the gown yourself? Are you just a face for the Queen's campaign?" Amahal tried to stay calm, but each headline chipped at her spirit. One evening, the Queen called her into the garden. Lanterns glowed softly as the crickets sang in the background. "Amahal," the Queen said gently, "truth doesn't need to shout. But sometimes silence is mistaken for guilt. Tomorrow, we will hold a live fashion exhibition. You will design a gown from scratch in front of the world." Amahal froze. "In one day, Your Majesty?" The Queen nodded. "You don't have to prove yourself to them. But you will remind them." The next day, the palace courtyard transformed into a stage. Cameras rolled. Crowds gathered. Nandi watched from the audience, her eyes filled with bitterness. Took her place before the table of fabrics. No assistants, no machines, just her hands, her needle, and her heart. The host announced, "You have 4 hours to create your design." The world watched. As the clock began, Amal's fingers moved swiftly, confidently. Sweat rolled down her temple, but her focus didn't waver. She hummed the same lullaby her mother used to sing, a melody that gave her strength. The camera zoomed in on her hands. Stitch by stitch, line by line, she turned plain fabric into art. The audience began whispering, admiration growing with every passing minute. Even those who doubted her could see the grace in her process. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Lady Thandi and Mandy conspired. They planned to switch the lighting to make Amal's final gown look dull under the cameras. "Let's see how divine her talent looks in the dark," Thandi sneered. But fate had other plans. Just as they tampered with the lights, one of the palace staff caught them. The queen was informed instantly. Without hesitation, she entered the control booth, her calm eyes turned cold. "You wish to dim her light," she said quietly. "But the light she carries doesn't depend on electricity." Security escorted Thandi and Nandi out in front of everyone. Cameras caught it all. The internet exploded with the footage. The same audience that once doubted Amahal now saw the truth unfold live. Back on stage, Amahal had finished. Her final gown was breathtaking, flowing white and gold, inspired by the sunrise over the African plains. When she stepped back, the queen rose and said, "My people, this is not just fashion. This is redemption stitched by grace." The crowd erupted into applause. Tears streamed down Amal's face as she bowed deeply. In that moment, every insult, every laugh, every night she had spent sewing by candlelight became worth it. After the event, reporters rushed toward her again, but this time their questions were different. "How does it feel to prove them wrong?" Amahal smiled softly and said, "I didn't prove them wrong. I proved my mother right." The clip went viral, drawing millions of views overnight. The comments were filled with admiration. "She's a symbol of hope. That's what real royalty looks like. Her grace silenced the world." Weeks later, Amahal opened her own fashion line, Blue Grace Designs, named after her mother's faded blue dress. Her first collection sold out in days. She hired tailors from underprivileged communities, training them for free, giving others the same chance she once wished for. The queen attended the opening ceremony wearing one of Amal's gowns, elegant, simple, and symbolic. Standing before the crowd, the queen said, "When they laughed at her dress, they were really mocking their own blindness." Today, that laughter has turned into applause that will echo for generations. Amal's eyes filled with tears as she looked around the room. Journalists, celebrities, and young women wearing her creations. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw Nandi, dressed humbly, hesitant, ashamed. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Nandi walked up slowly and said, "Amahal, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to say, I was wrong." The silence was heavy. Amahal looked at her for a long moment and replied, "You don't need my forgiveness, Nandi. You just need to forgive yourself." The crowd fell silent and then applauded. That night, as Amahal stood on her balcony overlooking the city, the stars shimmered again. The wind carried the faint sound of laughter and music from the streets below. She smiled softly and whispered, "Mama, they once laughed at my dress. Now they wear my dreams." The jacaranda petals danced in the night air, glowing like blessings falling from heaven. In that moment, she understood something deeper. Life doesn't always reward the loudest or the richest. Sometimes it rewards the ones who kept sewing when no one believed in them. Moral of the story: never underestimate the quiet ones. Their silence often hides the loudest destiny.